Hello, Simone. I cannot tell you how excited I am to be here with you today, because today we are going to be doing an episode that we were on vacation this last week, and so we weren't able to record new content.
Oh yeah, we're around our kids, supposed to be on vacation. All Malcolm can think about is this one thing. This is all I'm hearing about, the whole cruise.
Ana Valens drama. And so everyone else had covered this already. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to go into it in more detail. I'm going to find things that our side is getting wrong. I'm going to find bits of evidence that our side hasn't uncovered yet.
Oh,
I am going to get so deep that we're actually going to do 2 episodes on this, because I find the situation so fascinating from the perspective of, because there's just so much recorded history on this journalist, Ana Valens.
Okay, just for those who do not know anything about VTubers, because unlike Malcolm thinks everyone knows what VTubers are. VTubers are about as well known as furries. And actually, most people, Malcolm, don't know about furries either, okay? So
VTubers are people who use personas,
an avatar.
To avatars to sort of be them. We have an episode
like an animated anime face instead of our faces, for example.
Yes.
They typically comment on things. They comment on news stories. A lot of them are streamers. And so this is about a VTuber who was the target of a cancellation attempt carried out by a prolific online poster, author, journalist who happened to execute this targeted attack campaign through Vice news articles. And it is theorized that part of why this person, Ana Valens, did this is because they were a not very good VTuber who had lost a representation contract and had sour grapes about this VTuber being successful.
Hold on. You're confusing a number of things here. And you're actually getting something wrong that a lot of other people get wrong that we will get into. So I'm going to first clear up the first big mistake.
Do it.
A lot of people believe, and we'll get into this in a second, you don't need to understand what I'm talking about here, but basically this person did an unhinged piece about an agency, a lewd tuber agency called VAllure. And in the piece, you'll see that they were really just upset that they weren't hired by VAllure. Mm-hmm. And then Kirsch, one of the VTubers, they did an attack on multiple VTubers trying to get their sponsors to drop them. So trying to get
Kirsch being the main target, right?
Their livelihood. Kirsch was the main target, but they also targeted Leaflet, and Leaflet is our Oshi, you know, who we push. That a term in the like fandom community means the main person we push, and I really like her content. But anyway, both of these were right-leaning, but not like far-right VTubers. When I say right-leaning and not far-right, these are the types of people who would say trans people are real and deserve to be protected, but there are perverts who pretend to be trans people to get covered. Like they're at that level. They have not crossed the trans Rubicon yet to say actually the entire trans thing doesn't really make a lot of sense. But that's like their level. So they're not that conservative, right? But certain individuals have decided this just means they must be destroyed. And so Kirsch's understanding of this is, oh, well, I did this episode that attacked his piece, or her piece, sorry, not to misgender here. We're gonna use the, this is a she.
Right.
But I don't want to, you know, they put a lot of effort into this whole thing, and I don't see the point in hurting their feelings without reason, right? But we'll get into within these 2 pieces why you probably, if you are an actual, like if trans people really exist, you would want more than anyone else for somebody like this to not be able to identify as trans.
Specifically, if you are somebody who says being trans is not a paraphilias, you would not want this person representing you, because for this individual, very clearly, because they post a lot of their paraphilias publicly, feminization and the violation of other people's consent are their 2 primary paraphilias. So for this individual, their trans identity is a paraphilia, and they don't hide this.
Because it's very clear that they do not have a female mind trapped in a male body.
It's like when we get really angry about like great replacement theory racists calling themselves pronatalists. We're like, no.
Yeah, in the same way that we're like, no, great replacement theory is not pronatalism.
You're an embarrassment
your average trans person would be like, this is not a trans individual.
Exactly.
But the problem is with her theory that this came from this VAllure article, is that article came out in April. The campaign against her, what happened was there was a bunch of stuff on Blue Sky and X, and then you have the Vice articles that come out that sort of accumulate. It didn't start in April.
Oh.
It started in March.
Oh.
Now, here's a little question. What episode might she have posted in March that could have triggered Ana Valens?
I don't know.
And this is unfortunately what sort of undermines one of Ana Valens' core arguments about this. So Ana Valens publicly has something called POCD, which is PDA file OCD disorder. And if you look at some of her tweets, she will say things like,
is that
already
a real
getting
thing?
a lot of interest for Sexuality OCD as a Sex Ed 101 stream on additional resources on one of the main topics to discuss, POCD. There are so many more to discuss.
Is this just obsessive compulsive disorder where the compulsion is being a pedo bear?
Well, so that's the way they frame it, but it's not the way. So basically in the Kirsch piece where she calls this out, she's like, this is actually worse than like no contact maps. For people who don't know maps, maps are minor attracted people where they tried to normalize these desires. And they said, okay, well, I just don't contact kids. The way that POCD is different from MAPS is they believe that one of the treatments to it is exposure therapy. I.e. looking at, and I'll put the letters on screen here. So it's like a form of MAPS with a justification for engaging in it that this person says that they indulged in to help suppress it. And this person talks about age play and everything like that, which we'll get to because it gets really hypocritical in just a second. Where, you know, they or the person they were with, likely the person they were with. And tomorrow, what we'll get into with this individual is they did a lot of stuff with very young people multiple times. So there was a famous instance with them where they put a sexual toy in their butt and they played a game called Fall Guys, which is a game that is mostly played by kids. And anytime another character touched them, it stimulated them. And what you will soon learn about this individual as we go deeper into them, which is really fascinating, is their core arousal pattern seems to be around it violating other people's consent. Their most famous article by their own statements was an article around public sex and that we need to be having more of it. And it's not actually a violation of consent. They're like, well, somebody can always just choose to look away if they see you, is basically something they said in one part of the article. So
yes, of course.
This is taken down on Daily Dot. It took me a long time to get this. But yeah, and this appears to be the core motivator for their current trans identity. They have a male genitalia. They brag about their male genitalia all the time.
Didn't Ana Valens also write some kind of like sci-fi novel about how in the future trans women such as herself.
We'll get to that. So actually I can just jump right to that if you're interested to
because we're talking about her.
So this is something that a lot of people get wrong. So a lot of people, this individual did in a few different instances. So people who think that this is just one instance of them doing this, it was not one instance. They tell this same story using different wording in a few places. But every time before they tell it, they say, well, I'm just doing it to troll the other side. If you look at us when Trump won the election, we had the, go to the Mar-a-Lago breeding pits episode, right? Like that was the cover article image because I thought it was funny. But we don't like go on a detailed, and this is what the breeding pits will be like. And this is what will be done to women there. If you look at what this, like we just use it as like a shock joke and like title cards and stuff like that. If you look at what this individual is actually going into, I can read one of the shorter instances in which they did this because they did it a few times.
Yeah.
In the future, there are a number of institutions that emerge. There are community-run institutions where if you are a trans girl, you can go ahead and sign up for a reservation slot to an all access to one of many breeding facilities where you get to breed the S out of cis girl P. You can absolutely devastate that S, effing destroy it, murder it. You have to cycle the girls out. We have breeding saunas, breeding bookstores, breeding movie theaters. This is something we're building. This is the future. This is what TERFs don't want. The future that I want is a world where you can walk down the street and don't even have to worry about whether you're going to be able to breed that good pee. That's the future for all of us. And what you will see is we're going to go into it later.
The one thing
is written a bunch of sexual fan fiction.
Is consent. Like it's great until there's no consent. And why does the one thing Ana Valens has to be so into have to involve?
Well, that's what her trans identity is. It's a way to force people, and we'll see this as we go deeper into her stuff. Even the VTubing thing was about violation of consent.
Yeah.
It's a way to force other people to be forced into her sexual reality.
So it's not onogynephilia. It's not, no, I feel like I was born in the wrong body. And that's, I think, something really that muddles trans identity is that you get a mixture of all these things. There are some people who genuinely have body dysmorphia. There are other people who just feel like they're women or like they're men that were born in the wrong body. There are other people who love the idea of having sex with themselves as the different gender. And then you have people who love removing consent and realize, especially given our culture now, that this is the most effective way to do that every single moment of your day in public. And it must be so annoying to people in the movement to have to deal with these different groups.
Well, no, all the real trans people have been kicked out of the trans movement. Like, if trans people are real, like, and again, we question this. You can look at our trans anorexia video, which I think is the best evidence I've seen that it might not be a real thing. But if it is real, you look at the people who I would say seem to be real trans, like maybe Buck Angel or like Kris Jenner, who were like the original people who pushed the movement. They're all completely cast out of the movement at this point.
I think Kris Jenner is like the mom.
Well, not Kris Jenner. Well, who's the one?
Caitlyn Jenner.
Caitlyn Jenner.
Kris Jenner.
Yeah. They've all been completely excommunicated from the movement. The only people who are still in the movement are people like this girl who we're talking about here, or like Alex Vade-Minen, who we've talked about, who, fantasizes about, kinky little girls in restrooms. We've done his quotes before. And these are individuals who have not been excommunicated from the movement. Alex Vade-Minen, for example, recently had a Netflix special where he was a comedian, after these comments. They don't even make an attempt to pass. But anyway, I want to get deeper into the specifics of this, because I find everything about this person fascinating. I find the way they have tried to weaponize Vice against anyone who pisses them off, which we'll get into in a second, very fascinating. But if you want to get an example of like the types of things that this person writes and feels the need to share with other people, when they got the job at Vice, they wrote an article called Waypoint hired a giantess VTuber. And it's a picture of their lewd tubing avatar. Stomp, stomp, stomp. Here comes Ana Valens, the world's first and only giantess games journalist VTuber.
Oh,
boom, boom, boom.
Well, that's very specific.
Pulverizing the ground below. Whoops, wrong job. Sorry. How embarrassing. Let's start again. You see, she loves forcing. She uses the fact that she got a job at this mainstream outlet to force people to engage in her sexual role play.
Well, and also to advertise her.
Yeah, that's the first thing she thinks to do. And she earns the majority of her money from her sexual role play stuff, which she also says. But it's only about $600 a month, though, which we'll get into all of that.
Tough market out there these days.
Yeah, right?
But she's going niche. I don't know, like giantism. There's a world for it, but I don't think it's a big one.
It's apparently not a big one, but there's even a smaller world for trans giantesses.
Yeah, she's playing on hard mode here. Yeah.
So I want to get into the Via Lure article. So Via Lure was a VTubing agency for lewd tubers. Now, Ana Valens does not mention this at the beginning of her. You think there would be some disclosure?
Trigger warning.
I am a lewd tuber who applied to this agency and they didn't get back to me. We know she applied to this agency because some great autistic internet detectives found a post where after they did their first announcement, she cheered herself on about applying for them. But I will note here, before we go further with any of this, is she's going to be like, oh, well, POCD is about being worried about being into underage people. It's like, well, then why did you get mad at them? Why did all of this start when they published this? And keep in mind, Kirsch was hounded by one tweeter who I think even still is doing over 100 tweets a day about this. And we don't know that this tweeter isn't Ana Valens as far as I know, right? It seems like she might be, because we will get into instances in which Ana Valens says something on her Twitter account and then references it in a Vice article with her like actual Twitter account was like no upvotes.
Well, and then also have there not been like screenshotted comments, but the comments were posted 1 second ago, making it almost obvious that it was a sock puppet account.
Saying somebody threatened my life, and the comment was 1 second ago on Reddit. And it's like, okay, how did the Vice editing team let this get through? But
well, I think that's one of the mainstream criticisms of Ana Valens is that in her hit piece of Kirsch and Leaflet, there's a lot of non-confirmed, non-primary source, secondhand, anonymous Reddit references. No, it's not just
non-confirmed. She associates with them. In the Kirsch instance, she associates with Kirsch stuff that a stalker who hated Kirsch was saying about her.
Oh, good Lord.
And like very obvious stalker who was always trying to attack Kirsch. Then she, like, imagine like giving a microphone to somebody's stalker, right? Like, what a vile person. And then with Leaflet, she got mad at her for a title card that Leaflet doesn't make her own YouTube, just so people know. She mentioned this on our channel. Somebody else makes her YouTube for her. They had made a title card where she's covering another video where there is a black person being led around on a chain by a white person. And the point she was making in the video is, aren't our prison systems terrible? We need to talk about this. It's basically like slavery in a way. And that was the point she was making, but they had a smiling version of her avatar in one of the A/B test versions of the title card.
So not even on all of the title cards, just one, which probably got better
this happens to us all the time. Is people all the time take title cards of us, like the Hope Not Hate article on us used a bunch of title cards completely that were the episode
like should women be allowed to vote
where the point is yes they should, or the episode of secret Jewish technology for fighting the urban monoculture that had like an ominous looking like Star of David, and they're like, look, they must say the whole episode about how great yeshivas are.
Women and men should only be allowed to vote if they're contributing and net contributors to society, but sure, go ahead.
Yeah, but anyway, I want to get into this VTubing piece because I want to read some quotes from it so you can see how unhinged it is. So she gets angry that she doesn't get hired by them, is what we learn in the piece. And then she goes on a stream where a number of their talent are talking. And so then she writes about this incident where she thinks she's going to get them with a got you moment. And she believes this is the got you moment. During the stream, talent Shibi Kotanabum stressed Vialure will accept transgender talent as long as they, quote, go by female pronouns, quote, live life as a woman, quote, and, quote, sound like a woman, end quote.
Oh,
the Gen 1 team laughed as the issue was discussed. But, and now ... here, what does it mean to, quote unquote, sound like a woman? Is Vialure willing to accept trans women like myself, even though I have a feminine voice? I'm often clocked as trans during stream and in ASMR comments. Would I lack the right credentials to, quote unquote, sound like a woman? In other words, do they want trans talent, or do they want trans women who sound specifically like cis women?
They want trans talent that's trying.
Could, if necessary, hide their gender identity. Vialure never clarified these during the stream, essentially putting trans talent right back in square one. How does Vialure feel about trans women? What? That is the most, this is a company that makes money by men who are horny for the people who work at the company, okay? They're like, if you sound like a man or like a trans woman in your terms, you're not, guys aren't going to like that. They're not going to want that. You're not going to be able to get guys off, right? And this is true. This, in the second post we're going to do on this person, they do a long post about why nobody wants to date them. And then they go into the statistics showing that basically nobody wants to date trans women. And that's just like a statistical fact. So this is a company trying to sell erotic material. And she's saying that people should be forced to consume the erotic material that she creates, even if it's not what turns them on. That companies should be forced to distribute her erotic content to an audience that doesn't want it, even though it doesn't turn them on, because again, her core kink is the violation of other people's consent. And I would note, I don't actually have a problem with that as a key. If you are engaging with this within a fictional context, within, like, let's say AI chats, or within stories, or within books that you're reading, or within young adult fiction, because a lot of it does.
Totally fair.
You look at 50 Shades of Grey, you know, that's fine. That's great. More power to you. But if you engage with it through...
Well, or consensual non-consent, as we discussed with, you know, Ayla at one point. So, yeah.
Yeah, like consensual non-consent stuff. That's all fine. But what this person is doing is actively violating other people's consent to get off.
Yeah.
And when they
it's have non-consensual non-consent.
Yes, non-consensual non-consent is what this person is into, especially public non-consensual non-consent, like public sex or bringing people in at the beginning of a Vice article into their fetish, or, you know, as you can see here, forcing an agency to accept them. I can't believe that they wrote this in like a public article. But anyway, they then, you know, end the article by saying, so let me get this straight. Erotic content of young girls is fine, because she goes on this big complaint that some of their characters look like an anime style that looks underage and sometimes is explicitly underage. But lesbian content goes too far. What? That's particularly strange when you consider the popularity of F4F. So she gets really mad because she only wants to create. And if you even look at her own website, she will not create content for men. She has this fantasy that there are cis women consuming her content. And we'll go into like this being a fantasy, because she points out in another article that we'll read on another day that no cis women want to date her, but that online cis women are plenty into her. And I'm like, sweetheart, those are not cis women. Those are women pretending to be cis women, because as we know from the statistics, cis women basically almost never are into trans women when they're lesbians or anything else. But anyway, she wants to create this category of content. It's like, if there was a real market for this, why can't you just do it yourself and create this big audience? But anyway, simply put, the genre is not only enjoyed by queer women, but straight men as well. Men commonly listen to F4V content for the same reason that men enjoy watching real life lesbian porn, because it's about two women having sex.
So I would note here, we go into this extensively in our book, The Pragmatist Guide to Sexuality, but this is not why women on women content is so popular among male audiences. The reason it's so popular among male audiences is that average cis hetero men have a very strong disgust reaction to other men. And some of them have such a strong disgust reaction to seeing other men for like obvious evolutionary reasons. Any man who is okay with or still turned on by a group of other men sleeping with his partner is going to have significantly fewer surviving offspring than a man who isn't. Well, as women don't need this disgust reaction to other women. A woman who is okay with other women sleeping with their partners, especially when you consider it certain parts of human history, for every one male that had a surviving offspring, 17 females did, suggesting that females were herded by high-value men. Actually, disgust towards other women and sleeping with your partner would cause fewer surviving offspring in an evolutionary context. But anyway, the point here being is many men have a very strong disgust reaction to other men within their erotic content. This is also why Ana Valens seems to have a huge problem with this, not understanding this, why people consume futa. The reason why people consume this is because it is a way for an individual who doesn't want to see any males in their pornography have PIV sex still within that pornography. You, as a trans woman, are not futa. You would literally be the most antithesis thing that somebody who was into that category of porn would want, because from the perspective of the evolutionary deep culture doesn't care about modern cultural norms brain, you are a man that is dressed up like a woman. I note this because Ana Valens is constantly pointing out the popularity of futa pornography as a evidence that there is a big audience out there for trans creators like hers, especially ones that haven't had bottom surgery, when this is not the case. In our Pragmatist Guide to Sexuality, we did a survey of individuals who said they liked futa, and then asked how many of that group said that they were also into pornography that featured trans individuals, and the result was near 0%.
This is definitely the case when it comes to fetish material like bondage, feederism, giantess, and vor, where the premise is more important than the gender of the performers. And like, that's really effing specific. That wouldn't happen to be the type of content that you produce and are mad they won't hire you for. It's like, oh yes, because we've already gone over. It is. But I'd want to point out the really ironic thing about her attacking this company for their underage appearing models, which is to say, this person has repeatedly talked about how they engage in and promote age play. This is play where one of the partners pretends to be underage. Okay. Now, when companies have these YouTube avatar things, it is always an above age woman playing it. None of these companies have underage girls playing these models. It is literally the exact same thing that Ana Valens is promoting and doing herself. And keep in mind, this isn't like me saying this. Even her followers are arguing this. So if you look at quotes from her followers who support her, they're like, okay, maybe ARPing age play squeaks some. So it's not just regular, it's ARPing, removal of consent age play that she really liked.
Oh, no.
But surely this can't be worse than actually being an effing Nazi, right? Which is exactly what Kirsch and her supporters are. Keep in mind, Kirsch is mid-sauce. Like, she is not that conservative. She's not as conservative as us, and people say we're liberals all the time. Besides, I've been on X long enough to remember who Ana Valens is, and honestly, who the hell cares? A Nazi and an openly proud one is 1,000,000 times worse than a trans woman who's into age play. I said what I said. By the way, here what I'm going to put on screen, which I find really fascinating, is so in her article on Vice, so you can tell basically she's just using Vice to push her Twitter agenda without doing any real fact checking. doing all the normal stuff you would see from a Twitter or Blue Sky activist, like faking screenshots, like the one where she got the threat 1 second before she screenshotted it. Where here she says in a tweet, Via Lure says straight up no to F4F content, as the agency says it cannot ensure success if it creates content for queer women. Straight content is the vision of the company because of an established method. Will always be F4M content, and I can't see that changing at this point in time. One, why is that a problem? But two, what she has shared here was in her article is a link to her own Blue Sky account. Okay. And this, whatever this is called on Blue Sky, only has 77 likes and 12 reposts. This she thought was relevant to put in an article and a link from an article in a mainstream news source. This is what Vice has become, is a platform for individuals like this. Now, as I was going to say earlier, she's since removed her Blue Sky. She's since removed her Twitter. She's since likely been removed from the writing team of Vice because they removed these 2 articles from her. Daily Dot.
Only after Vice published an article defending her.
Yeah, they did. So there were 3 articles in this series trying to get these people canceled, trying to get their sponsors to drop them. She was trying to produce active harm in the same way that cancel culture usually did. And basically she found that cancel culture doesn't work anymore. Not only did it not work when she was attempting to do it on Twitter, like they did get one of her sponsors to drop her. This game called Crime City, whatever, I don't care. She's likely more popular now. This really centered Kirsch, which I really appreciate, happened. You know, she's more famous now than she's ever been. We've invited her to come on our show. She said she's gotten a lot of ass recently. So it may take a while. If anyone is fans of hers, be like, hey, you should go on Basecamp. You should talk to Malcolm and Simone because I'd love to help signal boost her. After all this, because I think that needs to be the community's reaction. When they see somebody trying to get canceled, everybody needs to move around them. What I was really surprised about is Kirsch, through a legal threat, was able to get all these articles taken down. And I'm like, you know, we've had, like, as I've mentioned, like 7 articles in the last month about us on the New York Times.
Well, I'm like,
BBC articles,
coverage
ABC
that
articles,
really
CNN, Jezebel.
us.
I've never thought of trying to have one taken down. Like, I was like, oh, these just draw more attention to us, right? Like, I didn't even realize having a completely fake article taken down. And The Guardian writes articles that are as unhinged about us as these articles are from Vice about her.
Yeah, well,
I'd also
we don't like legal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We really don't like legal stuff.
So another thing about this individual that hasn't been covered a lot is if you go to her Substack, you get a better picture of who she is and what she's dealing with. And what you learn is this is an individual who, by the success of the new right, by the success of the culture shift, has had her life systemically destroyed. She was a woke games journalist who focused on moving the Overton window around sexuality, around things like the sexualizing of minors, around things like, you know, with her like age play content, with her, you know, around things. And I love it. I don't actually care, like the whole lolly thing, whatever. Like, I'm not going to go there. I don't have an opinion on that. But what I will say, and I do have an opinion on, is her attacking another group over this while promoting the same thing. Like, I am against hypocrites. Okay? And I can be like, oh, Malcolm, you want... I mean, it's entirely fictional content, and we know that when you ban something like pornography, the amount of child assaults, SA assaults, goes up by around 50%. We saw this in the Czech Republic when it was banned. It's been seen in many other countries. I can only imagine, like, I know it's something that you're not allowed to study. Ayla got absolutely defenestrated over this, but
very unfairly
lower the... So this is one of these things where I don't know. If it's completely fictionalized content...
If I was to promote a law in this domain, it would 100% be focused on what reduces the amount of harm to children. And if it was shown, as I think the evidence leans towards right now, it's having this content available lowers the number of children who have to go through their lives having experienced this, then I will trade all the content in the world, however distasteful it may be. So just one child doesn't have to experience this, but we're likely looking at many children per year, talking around, if you look at the statistics, probably banning this would lead to hundreds more children per year having to experience this. And I just can't justify that over what is ultimately an aesthetic play. I mean, whether you're looking at SA offenders in prison often started consuming porn at a later age, or you look at, as we mentioned before, when porn bans have been removed in countries, the amount of SA that happens drops dramatically. And we're talking like 50%, like not like small dramatically. Or you can look at with every percent, I think it was every percent increase in internet access within the United States, SAs dropped by around 7%. Just across the board, you see this. And you can go to our other videos where we go deeper into the effects of banning various types of pornography. I'm not saying I like that this content exists, but what I'm saying is my end goal is reducing harm to children. It is not looking like the most conservative guy in the room.
I don't know. If it's completely fictionalized content.
Yeah, except that's not what Ana Valens was universally doing. Yes, some of it was fantasy, but some of it was putting...
Yeah, like, but her thing was like the
kids.
video game where she was doing that was actual kids.
Yeah, that crosses the line. Like, if you are doing this in a 100% synthetic environment, the problem is that she almost is like the biggest case arguing that, you know, any indulgence in this is not okay, because she clearly wasn't able to keep it purely fictional. And that is a problem. So I don't know.
Well, because she had these psychological licensing mechanisms like POCD that gave her the ability to engage in this stuff.
That's bullshit. Yeah.
No, I know it's bullshit. But what I'm saying is there's just like one, by the way, people are like, oh, well, this is a real thing. No, it's not a real thing. Like, one guy made this up and has published a bunch of articles on it in like 2015. This does not appear, it appears to be a license for authorizing exposure therapy for something that normally you would not promote. But anyway, let's look at her actual quotes here. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and let's be clear, because a lot of people's obsessions and compulsions with traditional OCD or like main non-autistic OCD are like, I'm really afraid of hurting someone. I'm really afraid of, like, no, their exposure isn't okay. Well, now let's go hurt people, you know?
Yeah.
That's not not
what you, but anyway, so she says, I've been looking for work in media for the past couple of weeks now, particularly games journalism. And surprise, surprise, it's been a complete waste of my effing time. Take a look at the positions available on Video Games Journalist Jobs site. As of this article, 6 are posted, 4 of them are unpaid. Of the 2 positions that offer compensation, both are freelance, and one of them is only offering £3 to £5 per SEO article. £3 to £5 per article. That's nowhere near a living wage for the work involved in researching, fact-checking. Well, fortunately for you, you don't do that. And writing a search engine optimized work of games journalism. But hey, if you're that desperate, go get it. £5 to write 1,000 words about the best Tokyo Ghoul characters. What a steal. In short, if you work in games journalism and are out of a job right now, you are effed. Also, if you currently have a miserable job in games journalism, but enjoy eating food, you are effed. And then ... I'm going to let you know a secret in the media industry. In 10 years, I have written many cover letters and many resumes for full-time jobs. I've never heard back from any of them, not once. Despite being a prolific writer, reporter, and even published author, no one has asked me for a chat, for a call, no interest from Jezebel, none from Motherboard, Gizmodo, a rejection email. What makes more sense? Blowing a whole day preparing a resume that will never land me an interview, or recording audio where I pretend to be a giant woman that eats people because it helps me make a couple $100 this month.
No, it doesn't take you a whole day to prepare a resume.
I know, but like, I understand where she's coming from, right? Like, okay, at least I can get a couple $100 a month if I do
Well, this is why so many women are on OnlyFans. Clearly.
Right. I mean, obviously it's not a long-term solution for most people who engage in it, which is why people, you know, don't promote this. But this I think gives an idea of like where this girl's mental space is.
Yeah.
This is an individual who bought into the opposing side of this civilizational conflict that we have been having, the side that was dedicated to cultural imperialism and wiping out any cultural differences, any differences in the way people see gender roles, any differences in the way people see sexual taboos or sexual norms, or what marriage means to them, or the future of human civilization. I mean, they were unmitigatedly the bad guys in this civilizational battle, but this person bought into it 100%. And I guarantee you they thought they were a good person when they were doing it. And now not only are they completely, you know, unemployable, living off of the food scraps of society, but they will likely for the rest of their lives be looked at with a degree of derision as the pendulum continues to swing more and more against the abuses of the trans movement. I could not imagine a fate worse than living in this person's shoes.
But I paid $5,000 to be a woman. This would mean I'm not really a woman. I'm just a guy with a mutilated penis.
Basically, yes.
Oh boy, do I feel like a jackass.
She's struggling to find work, so she decides to do basically online sex work and complains about it, says she can't get a job, but still manages to become a writer at Vice.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to talk about with this is she actually did at one point land a job, not just as a journalist, but managing an entire journal team. After one of the companies she worked at was acquired by another company, she quit within a month, said the workload was too high, and then set up a GoFundMe. So it's not that she's never gotten the shots in life; it's that she has thrown the shots away. So I will note here that her career choice around, again, not just games journalism, but if you look at her games journalism, it's all about trying to move the Everton window on sexual deviancy in ways that is likely psychologically harmful to people, as we'll get into in the next video on her, where we'll go over the mental damage she's done to herself, and we will see a picture of a completely destroyed individual, like we saw with this game journalism stuff. But the industry that they have touched, they also burned down. Games journalism didn't burn down because of the right. It burned down because of writers like her who cared about pushing their message over the truth. I know if I want to hear the truth, I go to someone like Kirsch. I go to somebody like Side Scrollers. I do not go to somebody like one of her articles, because, she's never worked in the games industry. If you go to Leaflet used to work for Riot Games. She designed Lux and Pantheon, right? Like, she is an OG gamer. She worked at like 5 major gaming companies and now does in part games journalism. And she's interested in a fairly neutral, slightly right-leaning version of the truth. This individual is not. This individual is interested in forcing other people, as you could see throughout the Allure article, to do what she wants, which is, accept this, accept this, accept this, right? And so if you look at this background of hers, she's finding it hurts her even more than other people in the games industry. So she writes, "It's strange because this was not always the case. Once my experience as a sex worker was a vital career asset. Back when I was a reporter specializing in online censorship," which is funny that now her main job is trying to promote online censorship, "sex workers' rights, and sex tech, being a sex worker was a career benefit. It was a sign that I knew what I was talking about. I offered lived experience, intuition, and digital gonzo journalist vibe that made me trustworthy in and out of the sex working community. It's one reason why, again, I was able to write a book, invited to talk at universities, and so on." Keep in mind, I don't know if her book ever really sold. It was about the early sexual history of Tumblr, but it actually looks like it could be interesting. From somebody who was rotted by exposure to that, we can see, let's prevent this from happening again. Now writing about adult content, sex work, and online sexuality is seen as taboo, as Google made Ding a domain covering these topics. So my experience as a sex worker is an additional professional liability, at least in the eyes of your average civilian. Why risk bringing on a sex worker? What kind of baggage does it bring on? For a long-term future as an adult content creator, but I also need additional income to support my career. A rookie lewd tubing only pays a couple $100 a month, hence the job search. So this is someone who destroyed their career prospects by engaging in what was normalized within her communities. And if you look at even her life, she has completely created a fictional persona that she has to play to be happy. Somewhere along the way, I stopped playing shooters and started wearing leather. I was having sex I didn't want and doing sex I wasn't into. I was reading books that were certifiably mid because other people said they were based. I was hiding my interest in nerd-s because it wasn't cool to be at home. Real queers touch grass, lathered lube, and effed. So basically, this is the type of person who gets so social pressured by these communities that even she sees the damage these communities were doing to her. That she was completely making up who she was, even if all she was doing was hedonism maxing. She then says, "One day I woke up and realized that I wasn't being honest with myself. I was trying to look punky because that's what you did when you were a D in Boston. I was trying to hang out in bars, events, and activist spaces that were cool, hip, sexy. Forcing myself to go to parties I didn't enjoy, listen to poetry I didn't like, jerk off writers I hated to read, wear clothes I didn't feel comfortable in, and for what? What good came of it?" Which is really sad to see this life that she had constructed. She thought if she always searched for validation, if she always chased the dragon of progressivism, the most victimized person in the room, the most etc. person in the room, the most degenerate person in the room, that she would achieve affirmation and be satisfied with her life. And her life, if you read her Substack, is just a constant, okay, I think I finally found what'll make me happy. And then a few months later, okay, that didn't make me happy. Okay, I think I finally found what'll make me happy. And if you contrast her life with, say, our life, where we literally live, the in scene in grandma and grandpa turn young again, or the end scene in Gladiator. I've got these fields of wheat in front of my house. I've got my kids. I've got my wife.
Well, without everyone being dead.
Yes.
But instead of sacrificing and working to build a meaningful career that helped people to build a family, to have kids, to work to make the next generation better than the last, this person, in an endless search for self-validation and pleasure, basically fell to the Cenobites.
Doors to the pleasures of heaven or hell. I didn't care which. I thought I'd gone to the limits. I hadn't. The Cenobites gave me an experience beyond the limits. Pain and pleasure. Indivisible.
We weren't against you feeling pleasure. We weren't against you being validated. We were trying to protect you from the inevitable of incessant and without restraint indulgence. These days, the fight often feels like progressives yelling at us like, why don't you want Cenobites hanging around our schools and recruiting children? Like, everyone should be okay with Cenobites. Cenobites are the best.
But it's like, why do we promote all the things we promote? Because it helps people. Because at the end of the day, while it may hurt you in the moment to say, hey, don't indulge in that stuff. Don't indulge in that stuff publicly. We've always said, like, what turns you on is what turns you on. You don't have a control of that. But don't indulge in it publicly because, one, it often ends up hurting other people. It often ends up violating other people's consent. And eventually, it will come back to you. It will come back and damage you. Mm-hmm. And in addition to that, because we were right about all of that, we say don't engage in these lifestyles. Like, yes, I understand that in the moment, this is the way you want to see yourself. This is what you think. But as we know from, the study, gender discontentedness and gender non-contented, used in 2023, of 13-year-olds who identify with the opposite gender, by the time they're 23, over 9 in 10 identify with their birth gender. This is a phase. This is what the data tells us now. And so when other people affirm this in you, even though it makes you feel better in the moment, it ends up causing more suffering than getting married while you're young, starting a family, and doing the hard thing. Going in and putting in the work, going in and doing the hustle, and doing the unglamorous job that makes your family the money it needs to make. And I think that a lot of people can see that what we're pushing, and they're like, yeah, but this hurts in the short term, but it helps people in the long term. Hmm. And I think that that's what a lot of the new right is about. It's like, what actually works? What actually helps people? We don't want to enforce some outdated gender stereotype. We don't want to enforce outdated sexual norms or morality or taboos. Where we enforce those things is because systems that you thought were outdated, it turns out, if you look at this all with a sober mind, seem to have had some benefit to the people who pursue them. And we say this even in ways that hurt, some of our followers. I could say something like, if you're a girl and you're not married by the age of 25, you need to be panicking. It's going to be very, very hard to secure a partner. And this hurts a lot of the women who watch this who are single. They're like, it's really hard to find a guy after 25. And I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to help the version of you that's still young. And I know it hurts for me to say this, that it becomes almost impossible because guys will play you. They see your desperation and they will use that to get you to stay with them, and then they trade you out for somebody younger in a few years. And it's horrifying that this happens, but they can get away with it because the dynamics are so in their favor when you hit that 30 dating market, which is, I'll see this with women. They'll be like, well, I'm a 9 out of 10. It's like, well, you're a 9 out of 10 for a 30-year-old. But the problem is 30-year-old guys for 9 out of 10s can date 25-year-olds. And that's the problem. And when they turn 40, it's the same. Right? So the whole system is rigged against you. It hurts to say this, but it helps society in aggregate to normalize this understanding. Now, if you want to go into other things I'd also note here, when we talk about like the underage content, a lot of this underage content, or I wanted to say the phenotypically young content. A lot of this phenotypically young content that people are complaining about. There was a recent instance in which somebody did a video of like an anime girl who had this sweet guy and she was in a wheelchair, and they're like, this is what guys actually want. It was just like helping a girl, and all these progressives like attack them.
these, and they were like, oh, how can you want to help a girl in a wheelchair? Like that's like a fetish, or this girl looks underage. And it's like, no, that's a normal way people are drawn in anime. No, guys really do want women who are dependent on them and that they can help in some
like
way,
literally the only
them.
way age is drawn in anime is if they add literal like wrinkles. And typically people don't have wrinkles until they're 55 years or older. So like, how are you going to show an anime that a woman is an adult? Like you can't, unless you make her look chibi. That's how you like, it's like clearly a child, I guess. But yeah. Just to make
But anyway, to quote from her again here, I found this really interesting because she's talking about a video game here. Annette's consent is best dubiously obtained throughout the game, but there's an implicit joy that she takes in the submission pass, as if Annette surrenders to her disposition. Unlike her twin sister Annabelle, she never truly chose to use the perverted app Demon Dash, so she can see herself as a victim robbed of her innocence. Barb's desire are being forced onto her if they're secretly her own. So in dominance, Annette is freed to be a pervert. It's as if Annette is saying, I don't really want to worship at Barb's feet, or I don't really want to be spanked. Mommy is making me do it. So again, you can see, again, throughout her work is this talk of violation of consent. If you look at writing that she's done, so if I just take a quick, I'm not going to read like the big fiction she's done that other people have done, like Kirsch read on her stream. You can see here, and what was really sad is you saw in this one article, she's like, oh, there's this, you know, her whole takeaway from society doesn't like me anymore. All of these friend groups I was trying to endear myself don't like me anymore. Cis women won't date me anymore. I'm going to go online to Ecos Portal, which is this vor community, because cis women still date me there. And I'm like, bro, there are not many cis women in that community. But anyway, if you look at like the things she's writing that people are engaging with, because I think understanding this individual sexuality is so fascinating to me, that could lead them to this life of
dark place,
just like pure. She reminds me of Roger in Family Guy when he dies and like his life flashes before his eyes. But not only is he in drag, but it's then just he makes the most evil choice at literally every stage of his life. And that's this individual.
Anybody want a piece of this? Against my will? I won't accuse anyone. I did it perfectly.
She writes, it's dire, it's urgent, you must acquire it, a feminization spell. You're eager to transform your body, and you've heard rumors of feminizing magic capable of shaping your entire form into exactly what you want. Blah, 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 blah. So you again see like, okay, this is the type of stuff she's into. But what you see here was very interesting is people will say, well, like being trans isn't a fetish for me. What is this then? Why is she writing this if this isn't a fetish? This is something that is meant to be masturbated to, and it's about feminizing yourself, okay? You can say this isn't a fetish, but for this individual, it clearly is. If you look at the audio that they have, because they say they're an ASMR, like VTuber, that you can buy, F4A, breed your goddess whore. T4F, hi, I promise I'm not the young girl with a kink. T4TF, one way or another, I'm sucking your girl D. Magical girl. T4T, T4T, T4. I'm not going to read all that stuff. Fem by a devilish librarian femdom. A succubus corners you, strips you, and s your pretty thighs. So again, you can see the removing consent from people is consistent throughout these. This stream delivery girl returns for oral during the autumn sale. So again, here you see a bunch of this. An interview with a mind-controlling succubus and her magic girl.
This does sound fairly typical for Gone Wild audio, to be fair.
No, I am saying to be fair, but the point I'm making with this stuff is, you know, your girlfriend is secretly a plant monster girl, and she wants to feminize your pretty body.
Correction, Gone Wild audio niche. Like most of it's like,
no.
The girl next door thinks you're hot. So this is not normal. It's not the most popular content.
The point I'm making is that for this individual, and they've written in their articles that like anyone who identifies as a woman can be a woman. They wrote that in the article. They're not like, oh, you need to look like a woman. Oh, you need to act like a woman. This is very much this violation of a consent form of transness where you don't need to pass. You don't need to do anything like that. Everyone just needs to see me the way I see myself, even if it's against their religion, especially when I can force their kids to do it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what you can see, and the point I'm making by reading through these, is feminization is a kink of theirs, and violation of consent is a kink of theirs. And it's not just like a kink, it's like the core kink of theirs.
Point.
It's the point. With that being the case, to say that this is anything other than bringing other people into their fetish is just a lie. Right. And this is why I said, like, I think trans people would not want an individual like this within their communities if there is a form of transness where genuinely no kink is a part of this, it's just gender dysphoria. Because for this individual, a kink is very much the core driving factor of it. If you go further, you'll see stuff. Well, you don't want to read all of her. I downloaded so many of this because I thought that it was so interesting to go into like all of these kinks that she had.
Well, if there's one thing Ana Valens is 100%, it is prolific. So
yeah. And it's been very interesting and fun for me to learn about, because it's like through a mirror darkly. Like, what happens if you indulge in this path? Where do you end up when you listen to the lies of the urban monocultural virus, when you buy them 100%? Because Ana Valens, if you read her like Substack, it's actually like decent writing when it's stuff that she cares about and she's not just trying to attack people. She could have been a decent writer, right? But this is an individual who allowed the brain rot to creep so deep and desperately into her mind that she is now unable to find happiness and basically just lives a life in poverty of screaming at her computer. And it's a life that she knows will only get worse from this point forwards. As society increasingly is like, okay, this form of degeneracy, that you have a huge public record tied to your real name or your trans name, you know, how do you get a job with that going forwards? How do you get a job when so many people hate you for trying to ruin the lives of multiple innocent people? And she believed that these individuals were Nazis. She believed that if they did anything that disaffirmed her, if they called her out for her PDA file stuff, that meant that they were trying to eradicate her, because in her mind, anything that is not affirming is genocide. Anything that doesn't say, well, you can be whatever you want and indulge in whatever you want is genocide. And that's how she got to the belief that Kirsch is genocidal, because Kirsch does not agree with this individual's take on transness, which is mortifying to me, because at the end of the day, our beliefs around gender norms and sexuality are cultural. Predominantly, that's what drives them. You can say, okay, well, what's the scientific answer? Unfortunately, the scientific answer doesn't promote transness right now, as we pointed out in a number of our episodes on this. So if you're saying, okay, well, then at least people should have the cultural right to do this, it's like, okay, you should have the cultural right to do this. That's why I'm gendering you correctly, right? But you shouldn't have the cultural right to label someone as genocidal because they have a different cultural perspective of gender than you, which you're going to find in Africa.
No. It look like if you want to become a lady but you're a man, you have something wrong in your mind. Something wrong in your family, something wrong in you.
Which you're going to find in Islamic cultures, which you're going to find in Buddhist, conservative Buddhist environments, which you're going to find pretty much anywhere you go in the world. They're going to be like, this isn't a valid thing. Even the cultures where they're like, oh, because we've talked about this before, they're like, oh, you see transness in different cultures, like Two-Spirit and like this thing in Indonesia, this thing in India, and we're like, no, you don't actually. In those cases, it's either young boys who are castrated for sex work, which we consider more like a castrato, or twinkie gay men, which you in our culture, we don't say what makes you trans is that you appear to be an effeminate man who likes sex with men. Like that's a twink. This appears to be completely unique to our culture. That was the thing that really changed my perspective on transness when I realized that. That's when I was like, oh, this is completely unique to our culture. And it leads to a 50% or around 50% unaliving attempted rate. Like, clearly that's a toxic thing. Why is it that the more accepting our society has gotten of trans individuals, the higher the trans unaliving rate has gotten? Why is it that when you go within cultures, the more accepting a culture is of transness, the higher the unaliving rate is of trans individuals within that culture? It only makes sense if you're like, okay, well, whatever the way the quote unquote accepting of trans cultures are treating gender dysphoria or whatever this individual has, that leads to more harm. And I don't want autistic kids to die. Like in the same way that like an adult woman who is like 30 and I'm like, look, it's going to be nearly impossible for 30-year-old women to secure a partner within our existing social structure right now, that hurts them, right? But it helps the younger version of them if I was able to get this message to them earlier. And it's the same with someone like Ana Valens. If I had gotten to her at the right time in her life, she might be happily married with kids at a gainful job, contributing to society and satisfied every time she goes home and you know, her 4 little kids jump in her arms. You know, that could be where she is. She could be living the gladiator life, but she's not. And I'm trying to help people like her, not hurt people like her.
Yeah. Or just, you know, living single or whatever, and just putting her focus and research into other things that don't hurt herself and other people so much.
Yeah, if she had focused on not indulging in all this degeneracy publicly and just becoming a good writer, that focused on not slandering people or libeling people, not trying to destroy people's careers, not riding every woke wave. She even admits, what I was trying to find, I remember now, was there's a quote from her where she's like, oh yeah, I don't actually want to write articles on Gamergate. This is early in Gamergate. So you can see this is an individual who likely would have been open to our perspective had it reached her early enough. She's like, I only do it because it pays better and more people read it. You know, so she caved to all of this stuff early on. And in that article, she makes fun of Mother Jones. She makes fun of other places where she has worked and have paid her to work because she's like, oh, they're terrible outlets, but they pay. You know, this is an individual who already didn't like the life she was living, but was doing it rather than doing the hard thing, which is perfecting her skills outside of the baity stuff. And that's really sad. I mean, she could do what we do. If you look at our videos, what we do is we do the catchy title cards, which are sort of baity. And then in the episode, we try to dig into like the actual content, right? Of what's happening, do a deep dive, get you guys information you're not getting anywhere else. And I think that that's a pretty good split the difference, right? You're playing the algorithm, but you're also trying to help people see what's really out there. And as I pointed out with this, I mentioned, which hasn't been mentioned by a lot of sources on the right, that this article where she has this big fantasy about denying people consent, she always couches it as a joke. And we've made jokes like that before as well. We just don't go in as much detail and they don't have a lot of correlation with our fetishes. So yeah, like we're not getting off on that, but I want to stand her side as well. Unfortunately, it's just very hard to stand. And the idea of I'm not a pedo, it's like, then why are you doing things with kids?
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing that gets me about this I'm not a X, I'm not a Y. And what's been really cool is seeing our larger sort of YouTube community come together around this. You know, everyone has been standing Kirsch. She's exploded because of this. Everyone's been standing Leaflet over this. And YouTubers who I previously wasn't sure what I felt about them, like Ace ended up reporting this individual to the FBI, which I think is absolutely justified. I would not be surprised if we find really heinous things that this person has done if you dig a little bit deeper, given the things that they've justified within their own life
publicly,
clear like blind spots they have. Like, I'm against phenotypically youthful, you know, lewd tubers, but I'm not against age play. Like what? Like what? Like, so this is a person who seems to be able to justify anything to themselves. And so this individual, this guy Ace, who is a smaller YouTube, I've seen him occasionally, mostly just attacking short fat otaku. And at first I was just like, ugh, he's like an ultra right curmudgeon. And now I'm like, you know what? No, he's on our team because we've attacked short fat otaku before as well.
What makes a man turn neutral? Lust for gold? Power? Or were you just born with a heart full of neutrality?
And so I'm like, well, maybe I'm realizing that this like wider circle of YouTubers has a lot more in common. And I think that we need to get better about that, like helping feature each other, helping promote each other, and discussing things with each other. When I always feel like, hey, why haven't we been on this channel yet? Why haven't we been on the, you know? So I got to get better at pinging these people. We do. Like, for example, I ping Lotus Eaters all the time. And for whatever reason, he's never had a son or gotten back to us. But I assume it's just because, you know, we're not. I've seen him at events, but I'm always afraid to talk to him because I have that look of, is this guy my friend? I feel like I know him really well, but I don't know from where. And then after the event, I'm like, that was Sargon of Akkad. That's why really I thought I knew him. But at like multiple events now, we've gone together and spoken at the same time.
Well, thanks for enlightening me. It is interesting how one person's attempt to cancel another led to a deep dive on them by many people in one of the biggest self-owns, at least in this little corner of the internet, the VTuber corner of the internet, and maybe ever. So,
well, we've been seeing this repeatedly, like What We Do in the Shadows or whatever, the other guy who tried to cancel somebody this year that we did the piece on.
So what if he's a conservative? Is that a problem? Which the answer to that is yes. But the reason that I care is because this does not belong in horror, or anywhere. I care deeply about horror, and everything that he does has demonstrated so far in his career that he should not be welcomed in our spaces, or even, you know, just in public in general.
Every time somebody has tried to cancel somebody this year, it's been like a bam, like punching elastic, and their fist flies back and smacks them in the face.
Yeah, canceling doesn't work the way it used to, I guess.
No, canceling works in reverse now, and predominantly in reverse now. We actually even saw this on the right. One of these right-wing guys, what is it, James Lindsay? We've met him at a number of events, but he tried to create this concept of like the woke right to like further police like what's going on within the right. Okay. And while I do think that we on the right should push people out who are just going to sink our cause, like, you know, the far racists and anti-Semites and stuff like that, I think was a fairly big Overton window. Even when people disagree with us pretty severely, we should not be censoring what's being said in our communities if it's promoting the wider agenda. And he doesn't think that. He wants to censor pretty significantly what's being said on the right. And it's just completely flown back and hit him in the face. Like basically none of the mainstream right-wing voices support him in this. And it's been interesting to see that it's not just when the left tries to do this, it's when the right tries to do this as well.
Okay. Well, that's good, because in the end, the sanctimonious nonsense is tedious and I don't like it. So, haha. I'm going to go make mapo tofu.
I'm really excited.
And I'll see you.
I'm actually really excited.
Well, we'll see if it turns out. I'm going to try to double up the sauce. So I need to look at what actual scratch mapo tofu sauce is, because I wanted me to use that pack you got, but you probably also imagine it's too light on the sauce, right? So shall I do that?
I don't know. The last time you made it by the pack's instructions, it was really good.
Okay, then I'll just do that. Safety first. That'll be easier. All right.
And
off I go.
Yes.
I'm a couple of minutes late for, and the cotton candy machine has shipped.
Is here or shipped?
It's shipped. It is shipped. It's not here yet. It is.
We wouldn't buy our kids on the cruise $2.50 cotton candy because I was like, that's too expensive. But as soon as we got home, we bought a machine to make cotton candy. One of the industrial ones, like you have at fairgrounds as well.
Oh, we bought it on points. Okay, so technically, it cost less than $2.50 because it cost nothing but points. I mean, there's obviously the opportunity cost. We could have used those points to buy a necessity. But I just love that what we do is when we see our kids like something, we're like, I'm not going to buy it. You know, I'm not going to have someone get a fish for me. I'm going to buy a fishing boat.
Oh, they want to play on a bouncy house? I won't pay for go to one. I'm going to buy one that can go in my house.
Yes. But no, we've gotten a lot of mileage out of those bouncy houses.
Oh, yeah, we have. You looked at me skeptically when I first got them.
I did. Really? You're not going outside though. That's not getting wet. You're going to ruin it instantly when you do that. Every time you take an inflatable or some kind of thing outside, it works one time and then you break it, and I'm not doing it with this.
Okay. Yeah? Are you seeing everyone watch the movie? Are you happy?
I can talk this fast. Happy birthday! I can talk that fast.